And welcome back to Inland Empire Alive. I feel like this show has been all about the kids, Monica, right?
Today, absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of stuff
Our
about
youth.
the kids. Yes, absolutely. And right now, welcome to the show, Grewal. She's an attorney, very specialized attorney, and again, an advocate for the kids out there, right? So, Poonam, can you talk about who you represent and why you represent them first off before we get into some of the meat and potatoes of this?
Yes, absolutely. I represent, along with my partner Michelle Powers at Powers Grewal Law Firm, we represent children and adults who have disabilities and should or can be protected protected under IDEA, which is the Individuals, Disability and Education Act. It's a federal disability and education rights law. We also represent youth and adults in the criminal justice system because we have determined over a period of time that there is actually an interplay between children with special needs and also the criminal justice system.
And exactly how does that, what's that connection there? Because you just kind of touched on it, but these special education children or youth, they might be distributed to, like you said, in a prison or something like that, where that's not really necessarily what they need because they're not being identified as what they truly are, right?
That's right. So, Pep, what we have found over a period of time is we have a disproportionate number of individuals in both the juvenile justice system and the adult criminal system that suffer from disabilities such as ADHD, sensory processing disorder, intellectual disability. Perhaps they're on the autism spectrum. Perhaps they have a speech and language disability. And the reason that these individuals may find themselves either in the juvenile justice system because they are youth or in the adult criminal system, it's because by and far they have not been identified as they're navigating through the public education system, and they should have been. So they're not progressing in their learning. Perhaps they have not acquired skills for independent living. Mm-hmm. Perhaps they have not acquired skills to move on to higher education. But at the core of it all is they haven't been identified, they haven't been diagnosed, they have trouble integrating themselves into the local community in a way that is productive. Yeah. And so what we find is when we go into the criminal justice system and we go into the juvenile justice system is we really don't find individuals that are criminal masterminds. Yeah. You know? We find individuals like little Joey or Mr. Smith who, shucks, he's a really good guy, but he just can't seem to get it together. He never got his diploma. Yeah. He has a difficulty in reading. He only reads at a third grade level. He's perhaps bipolar. He probably has anxiety disorder that really prevents him from functioning as a law-abiding citizen outside in the public.
So like an underlying issue as opposed to just being outright malicious, what
That's
they're trying
correct.
to do. Yeah.
He's not a criminal mastermind. Yeah. And we see a large percentage of those individuals find themselves in the juvenile justice system or in the adult criminal system. By the time they get there, we've got a whole host of different issues and problems in terms of their conduct.
That's such an important and vital service that you're providing to the community and people, because a lot of times people are misunderstood.
Yeah.
That's
right?
correct.
And then they do not get the services that they truly need to make them a productive citizen in a community. Can you tell us a little bit about what say a client or somebody that you're representing could expect or look for in their daily lives that may trigger and say, wow, I need to go to them. Maybe I just have misunderstood my child, or
maybe I need to talk to a special education attorney or even an advocate. Well, what you're really looking for is very early on with your child, if you find that your child is not progressing at school, not keeping up with his peers, his or her peers in the classroom, not being able to sit still, not being able to turn in the homework, not being able to read the social emotional cues. This is a child that may not have been identified. Perhaps the pediatrician said, hey, look, little Johnny appears to have some type of reading disability, some type of auditory deficit, perhaps he's on the spectrum, perhaps he has ADHD. The teacher is saying, look, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I'm having difficulty with your son. At that point, what the parent can do to navigate the system, at the very least, is to say, I'd like my child to be assessed.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the starting point. And even if the parent doesn't have the information to ask for the assessment under IDEA, Individuals, Disabilities and Education Act, which is a federal law, it mandates the public school system to assess Johnny or Susie and say, hey, look, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, we have concerns here because this child has a right to a public education to prepare him for independent living or for college. And we don't think he's progressing at that level. So those are the beginning signs. One of the things that I do try to educate the parents on is some disabilities are very evident. If you're in a wheelchair, if you're visibly disabled, the most difficult cases, and I think it's very difficult for parents, is when there is no visible disability. Yeah. Their child has an average IQ. It's those situations where the parent is saying, you know, my daughter's very bright. She can do these incredible things. However, she's just not making the grades. She's not reading the social cues. She's been suspended from school several times this year. She's always stuck in her room. She's not communicating with her peers. Those are the parents that absolutely need to talk to a special education attorney or an advocate to help them identify perhaps your son or daughter should be protected under the Federal Disabilities in Education Act.
Wyndham, I think you just described, what a client of yours might look like. Real quick, and we don't have a lot of time here, but what are some of the potential damages of not maybe interceding early, like you just said, maybe when you target that as when they're a child before they get to, an older teenage, formative years, I guess you would say, but, what are some of the dangers if you let it prolong and don't, like you said, read some of those cues along the way?
Okay. Well, the dangers are multifaceted and could be far-reaching and quite extensive to the individual, their family, and the community at large. Off the very bat, I can tell you their grades are going to suffer. You're going to see a decline in their grades, right? You're going to see a failure to thrive and an actual regression in their academic scores. They're not advancing with their peers. What then that means is you're sending a child to school on a daily basis and you're setting that child up for failure. Kindergartner, first graders, second graders, they want to come home to mom and say, look, I got a star, I got an A. Now their self-esteem is suffering. You're going to see that.
It's almost like a snowball, isn't it?
It's a snowballing effect. You've got self-esteem issues. You've got anxiety, depression. Now you don't want to go to school. You got attendance issues. Then you begin to basically close the doors on options to you as an adult. You may no longer be college bound. Your parents are beginning to feel, how is my child going to live independently? When those options begin to close, at home and in the school ground, they begin to close in the community at large. And that's what you see. It's a snowball effect. The child loses, the family loses, and the community at large loses. We have children, Monica, that 19 years old, they have an average IQ. Their only difference is perhaps they have a little bit of OCD, ADHD, they may have some other processing or sensory disorder, and they don't have sufficient reading skills in our community to get a California driver's license. And you can imagine, this is an individual who's going to go on to be a father. He's going to have dependents. He doesn't have a California driver's license. So the consequences are far-reaching, not just to the individual, but to us as taxpayers.
Could be detrimental to everyone in their circle.
Absolutely. You've just basically taken out what otherwise would be a productive member of society with an average, perhaps even an above average IQ, because we haven't been able to recognize that this individual has a different learning technique. This individual should be protected under the Individuals with Disability in Education Act, and can be.
Yeah.
It sounds like you provide families and people hope and an opportunity to change their lives and go in a more positive path and give them the resources that they really need. From their perspective, if they come to you, what would you say their potential success rate is to get their child the resources that they need?
Okay, well, Monica, our success rate right now has been at 99%. And the reason why it's so high is it's because we provide a pretty extensive free consultation with the parent. We are very selective in the cases that we choose at Powers Grewal. We take each case by a case-by-case basis, because you have to keep in mind, we are now trying to identify this unique individual's special needs, his or her strengths in learning, weaknesses in learning. We are trying to understand the parent's goals. Maybe their goal is to teach their child life skills, what we try to accomplish in our consultations, which are pretty extensive, is review the document, understand where is this family coming from, where is the student in the context of available remedies under IDEA. When we're able to do that, we feel pretty confident that we can have a pretty high success rate. So that's what we've been seeing over the years, about a 99% success rate, going back to your question, in matching the student with the appropriate support services and placement that are available under the federal law.
I'm sure the needs differ from person to person to person, right? So if you'd like more information on their services, that's powersgrewal.com, POWERSGREWAL.com. Quinn, thank you for the time. We really appreciate it. Very enlightening there.
Thank you very much for having me today.
All right, we'll be right back here on Inland Empire Alive.